foreign ministry to fund Israel tour for MAGA, America First, pro-Trump influencers. So let's rewind a little bit before we get into this latest development. You might remember back in April, this blew up. Netanyahu pushes back on anti-Israel trends in meeting with podcasters. Now, Dave Rubin, having been one of those podcasters, was no surprise. But someone who got really embarrassed by the revelation that he was there, who expected them to play by Chatham House rules, was Tim Pool. Let's see what he said to justify not telling his audience that he was summoned by Netanyahu to a Hasbara meeting.
I got late word that I was invited to a private roundtable meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It was under what's called Chatham House rules. For those that are not familiar, this means that you cannot reveal anybody who attended, nor attribute anything to any one individual, as they can deny it, and they would. However, what I love about what the White House is currently doing, when you bring together a bunch of influencers and podcasters who don't know much about journalism culture, whatever you want to call it, not that we respect it tremendously, most people didn't know what Chatham House meant. So with all
okay, so I want you to pick that apart for a second. So the way he's trying to justify this is by saying the rules were supposed to be that no one was going to find out I was there.
Right.
And some of the people there didn't know journalism like I do.
Right.
They're stupid, ignorant, uncouth, lesser podcasters. So they spilled the beans.
Right.
That's supposed to make them look better.
Right. Exactly.
Now, does this have any influence on Tim Pool's reporting? Is it innocent? Well, you be the judge.
Concerned with having American aircraft carriers over there. Like what I keep being told about the USS Liberty. That's something with the Israeli government.
No, you should.
No. Wait.
You should be careful about that.
Allegedly, the Israeli Air Force jet fighter aircraft.
I mean, they did end up paying out the American government.
So I'm concerned, like false flag operation, like a missile comes out of Gaza and hits one of our aircraft carriers, but it was actually an Israeli missile. Well, I don't want. We should get out of there.
It doesn't. Well, let me stop you there. It doesn't matter where the missile comes from.
That's weird, huh? Holy shit.
So, yeah, I think you could safely say that Tim Pool has been compromised by Israel. I don't think that's a stretch to say that. You want to know how cheap lesser influencers come from? To paraphrase Tim Dillon, Tim Pool's pussy is probably expensive.
Right.
His pussy's probably not cheap. But there are a lot of people in this space who come very cheap. You might remember a few months ago, Nick Sorter broke this story. Over the past 48 hours, several large, supposedly MAGA-aligned influencers posted almost identical talking points fed to them, convincing you Maha was out of line for not wanting soda purchases with food stamps. And he got into how much they got offered. They were texted by Influenceable telling them to help push back against government overreach and told they'd be paid between several hundred and even 1,000 for each post attempting to turn MAGA folks against RFK Jr. and Maha. A few, not even all, 1,000 was the top rate. Some of them settled for a few $100s.
Yeah.
And they did it. Clown World, Eric Doherty, not Jerome Powell, Ian Miles Chong. They all posted almost identical language about how Snap should be able to buy soda, which, I mean, that runs against the core of not just Maha, but just general conservative ideology. These guys took $1,000 basically to argue against the whole theory of conservatism without no questions asked. No questions asked. So how much more money do you think these guys get from Israel in many cases. I can't say who, but many of these people you'll see defending Israel who are in that space. How much money do you think they're getting from Israel? If they will sight unseen just completely contradict the whole conservative theory of government for a few $100, $1,000 top amount, how much more will they do for God knows what Israel will give them? What do they do for a trip, right? All expenses paid trip. Well, so when you see someone like this piece of shit, Zionism Observer here says, the Catholics are Hamas is not something I expected. Joel Berry is the managing editor of the Babylon Bee. And this was part of a 3-day rant he went on after Israel bombed a Catholic church. This won't be easy for people to hear, but there are only about 200 professed Catholics still living in Gaza, and they all support Hamas. Now, if you know Zionists, it is entirely possible that he is just this much of an asshole. But when you look at the fact pattern, it's just as likely his opinions are paid for, that he is controlled by Israeli intelligence, like I think you can pretty conclusively say Tim Pool is. So to continue, to bring us up to the present, the Israeli Foreign Ministry will fund a tour of Israel for U.S. social media influencers affiliated with the Make America Great Again and America First brands of conservatism, which represent a significant portion of President Donald Trump's voter base. The initiative aims to boost Israel's image among young American conservatives by encouraging these influencers to disseminate messaging that aligns with the Israeli government's policy. The ministry will channel tens of thousands of dollars for the trip through the nonprofit organization Israel 365, which was awarded the contract without a tender due to its, quote, unique position to convey a pro-Israel stance that aligns entirely with the MAGA and America First agenda, unquote. Foreign ministry officials say the tour delivers significant media advocacy and diplomatic benefits and represents a strategic shift as traditional outreach is no longer sufficient to shape public opinion. They aim to leverage the massive followings of young social media influencers to bolster Israel's standing in the U.S. Founded in 2012 by Rabbi Naftali Tuli Weiss, Israel 365 promotes support for Israel based on political, spiritual, and biblical principles. Its affiliated website states that the group, quote, stands unapologetically for the Jewish people's God-given right to the entire land of Israel. I can't be sure, but I assume they are speaking for the Greater Israel Project, which they seem to be undertaking right now. Rejects a two-state solution as a delusion and describes its mission as defending, quote, Western civilization against threats from both progressive left extremism and global jihad. Now think about what you hear from these trigonometry douchebags, what you hear from Douglas Murray. You see, these things fit together very easily, right? They are natural allies in many ways. Not probably the average rank and file MAGA person, but the people who make their money off this MAGA America First shit. Yeah, I mean, this is their shtick, right? And apparently a lot of it is paid for. The ministry's contract with Israel 365, valued at more than 290,000 shekels, $86,000, was justified by officials citing the group's, quote, experience and know-how in creating awareness, engagement, and mobilization of Christian audiences regarding their support for the Jewish people in the state of Israel. Since Hamas attacks in October 2023, ministry officials say Israel 365 has deepened ties with MAGA and America First movements, appearing at their major events and helping recruit prominent conservative figures to visit Israel. The initiative will bring 16 U.S.-based influencers under the age of 30, each with hundreds of thousands to millions of followers, to counter what the ministry sees as a decline in pro-Israel sentiment among younger Americans. According to a foreign ministry source, the initiative reflects a broader transformation in Israeli public diplomacy. Quote, "We're working with influencers, sometimes with delegations of influencers," the source said. "Their networks have huge followings, and their messages are more effective than if they came directly from the ministry." Okay, so you see how they're thinking. So very often when you see these America First, MAGA, Trump influencers tweeting out stuff about Israel, doing pro-Israel segments, they're compromised. They're compromised. These are not opinions that they organically hold. They're being paid or influenced to hold these opinions. The strategy appears to be paying off. During the 12-day conflict last month with Iran, Israeli digital messaging garnered roughly 1.8 billion online views, boosted in part by social media influencers with millions of followers. The foreign ministry has set a goal of bringing 550 influencer delegations to Israel by the end of 2025 to continue this outreach.
Wow.
Now, I want to make just one point here, and this is something that's often occurred to me. Okay, so you see here, American Jews tend to favor Democratic candidates, with 71% of Jewish voters choosing Democratic candidates on average, and 26% choosing Republicans since 1968. Now, in the last election with Harris, that held up. Like, there are different numbers based on the exit polling, but yeah, it's about 70% even in this election, even with all the controversy around Gaza. In this election, those numbers about held up. Most Jews are Democrats, and American Jews, and they're not just Democrats, they're very Libby kind of Democrats. They're very NPR kind of Democrats on the whole. But at the same time, 80 to 85% support the state of Israel. Now, this is kind of weird when you consider that the state of Israel is in love with their Antichrist, right? Trump is the Antichrist for Democrats. Look at the billboard when he won the election. "Congratulations, Trump. Make Israel great." These billboards went up after he bombed Iran on a major highway in Tel Aviv, the main highway. "Thank you, Mr. President." This is from Adam. "This is a billboard in Tel Aviv, not America, Tel Aviv. The people of Israel know who Trump really works for, and it's not Americans." The billboard says, "Mr. President, finish the job." So this is a contradiction that they deal with by pretending that what's going on in Israel is all Netanyahu's fault. It's basically the Bernie Sanders deflection, right? "We must tell the Netanyahu government." They refuse to acknowledge that the whole premise of Israel is fascist, and that's why the country is so comfortable with Donald Trump. That's a natural partnership. The partnership with the Democrats, given what they like to pretend to stand for, is always very difficult to justify. Whereas if you look at the kind of fascist ethnocentrism that the Republican Party, particularly under Donald Trump, represents, Israel is a natural ally for that movement and for that party. They do not want to face that, and they do not want to acknowledge that while they proudly proclaim, I mean, part of how they square that circle is it's the only democracy in the Middle East. It's that Michael Rappaport stuff. Look, you could fuck a guy in ass in an alley,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Of course, it's this liberal oasis of sexual freedom in the Middle East, while at the same time, this ongoing genocide is something they simply cannot acknowledge exists, or if they do acknowledge it, It's all Netanyahu's fault. Okay, so it's the only democracy in the Middle East? Okay, well, then they elected Benjamin Netanyahu. He's been in their government for over 20 years. So how do you say he doesn't represent Israel? Right? I thought it's a democracy. So that is how they square that circle. But it's a big contradiction, but it also tells you something about the policies of the Democratic Party and why they have these policies. If the Democrats actually posed any threat to Israeli aid, then you might see some of these, like, what comes first, the Zionism or the liberalism? I'd say for most of them, the Zionism. Like, if the Democrats really cut off aid to Israel, you'd see a lot of these liberal Democrats start voting for Trump. They really would. But at this time, they don't have to make that choice, because in the end, the Democrats basically do what they do. Oh, yeah, this is terrible. We feel really bad about this, while still supporting the regime.
Well, yeah, I mean, you saw a lot of that in Michael Rappaport, who you mentioned. You know, right. I mean, he was considered a Hollywood blue MAGA liberal.
Right.
His content that he made as an influencer, podcaster, whatever the hell he is, shit talker, was all just anti-Trump content. And he would call Trump a racist, you're a liar, you're a misogynist, you're a sexist, you're this, you're that. When's the last time you heard Michael Rappaport criticize Donald Trump? I can't think of the last time I heard him say that. Right? Because for him, it was pretty obvious what the calculation was. Now, for others, it's not as easy as it is for Rappaport, but it is an interesting question, certainly. And right now, as it stands, and I think this is part of why a lot of the older Democrats are so hesitant to make a break from Israel, because they know a lot of their older base might split with them over this if they actually go in a more anti-Israel direction. I'm not saying that's the whole reason or even most of it, but I do think that is something that they think about, especially in these big cities, especially cities with large Jewish populations like New York, right? That's definitely something that they have to think about, and I think they do think about it, which is part of the reason why there's such stasis on that side, broadly speaking. In terms of the influencers, it just goes to show you that a lot of the incentives that exist in corporate media exist in quote-unquote independent media, and to a large extent, those incentives are more dangerous because, you know, you go up to one of these influencers, they're their own shop, right? They don't have to run it by the board. Right? They don't get a salary from anybody. It's week to week, sink or swim. And so, you dangle some money in front of them. You promise them, to the extent that you can, greater followership, and exposure, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, man, a lot of these people will do it. If they'll hawk government subsidized corn syrup for a few $100, then of course they're going to do this. Of course they will. Yeah,
of course they will. You have to remember, for most people in this space, this is a business, and they've just taken an alternate route to a career in media. They bypassed the ladder that you would have to climb to get an anchor position at Fox, which is a steep ladder that you're not likely to get to the top of. And they just went independent, hung out their shingle. Most of them fail, but a few of them succeeded. But you got to remember, that's the perspective they're coming at it from. They're not activists. They're not moral actors. They're business people selling you a brand. They're selling you a product. Now, that is true of MSNBC as well. That's true of CNN. That's true of all of these. But with independent media, part of its brand is that it's supposed to be independent. And it's really not. It keeps reminding me of the line in Educating Rita, because when she goes to educate herself, she talks about how she's in a bar and everyone's singing, and she thinks to herself, there has to be a better song to sing. And after she's transformed, Michael Caine says to her, you didn't find a better song to sing. You found a different song to sing. Right. That is very much the independent media. It's not a better song. It's a different song with more downscale aesthetics.
Please clap.